I know a trebuchet won't reach escape velocity to toss Chuck Wendig to Mars, but an electromagnetic railgun of sufficient length could achieve escape velocity and send thousands of SJW comic idiots very far away. Dear Lord, don't make me defend this pig effer. Chuck Wendig was right. People shouldn't steal. Oh, this is a 2-minute fight in Chaz over the use of a ladder, and they are outraged. What's that phrase? If you don't know where you're going, you'll get there. That's Seattle right now. A writer's work product is no different than a guy painting your house. Stealing somebody's labor or product is taking food off their table. Lars Ulrich was also right, if you remember the 90s. And okay, fair enough. You don't feel sorry for millionaires like Metallica or Chuck Wendig or Mark Waid, fine. But what about the other writers and musicians? They're not all rich. Many of us are comicsgate. Well, how would you feel if you had a $30,000 campaign that had finally crossed over into being profitable and people were pirating copies of your hard work? You'd probably be pissed. The concept of property and ownership goes back a long time. It's important to a well-run civilization. It's the difference between a high-trust IQ society and a low one. It also relates to capitalism and communism. Commies in the West are the biggest bunch of hypocrites. They always want to share your labor but never seem to do any actual work. Hey, we need a garden, everyone agrees. Now we need people to dig, water, weed, kill snails, and keep deer out for the next 4 months. Suddenly, nobody is around. Which reminds me, they've got 2 gardens in Chaz. One is exclusively for black indigenous POCs. Things certainly have changed since the days of Woodstock. There is no racial discrimination in communism. It's class war, not race war. The kids at Chaz have gone full horseshoe theory and developed their own ethno-state. There are a few divisions in the left, the ever-shrinking true liberals who believe in equal opportunity. Perhaps some even believe in the guarantees of equal outcome, basic necessities like healthcare, universal basic income. But if someone saves their money and starts a business, they get to keep the profit. Where some commies believe communism is like community property in a marriage in a CP state. When you work for the community, which works in a marriage because you're supporting your sexual partner and feeding the kids. But it doesn't work in a nation because nobody outworks the lowest performer. There's no point in innovating a new design by working long hours when you won't get rewarded for it. That's why communists couldn't even build the car from the ground up. They just copied a Fiat, made it even worse, and called it a Lada. The other group of belief in Antifa and BLM are the cultural Marxists. They aren't actual Marxists. Cultural Marxists are just puppets for the puppet masters. But they have no idea that they are useful idiots. When you have a mob and you don't have a leader or even a council, you have to argue over every single decision, which is what they're doing right now, because the thought of a leader or a small council, i.e. a Soviet, an oligarchy, hey, read the history of the Bolsheviks, quickly take power to the detriment of the mob. Anyway, so you get what these kids are doing here is they're arguing over every single little decision. It's hysterical. They have shifted from class war to race war, so they aren't really true commies. They're something different, I guess. They're actually racial supremacists. They don't want an equal society. They want a segregated one with a racially based hierarchy. Roughly in order, you got Indians, black folk, Mexican, Asian, Euro. This is the problem of any diverse society, even in the 60s, because the black socialists were supremacists, even back then. And I know it's not politically correct to say that. Because the goal of communism in America is not a true classless society. That's just window dressing. The goal is division. Cultural Marxists just want people fighting. And, it would be hysterical if the white kids left. Then it would be black, Latinos, Indians arguing for who is the most oppressed, and thus who gets to lead the revolution. Because I guarantee you that without the white kids to act as their whipping boys, the whole thing would collapse faster than an African country that kicks out the white farmers. There's a video of a kid who is almost completely covered. He's got a face mask, a beanie, and a hoodie pulled down to cover up how fair-skinned he is. He's telling the Antifa kids to pay the Black Lives Matter guys $10. because the New World Order means that the whites will need to give up their positions of power to the blacks. First, I didn't see the Antifa kids digging deep. They're probably thinking, why is this 1024th Indian telling people what to do? Who made him the authoritarian? Which is another division between them. The authoritarian versus the libertarian left. The authoritarian left tells people what to do, how to live their life. They have guards at the border searching people. They have their own private police force attacking people. They're even kicking people out of Chaz. The libertarians don't want to exclude anyone. They're more on the live and let live side of things. Don't use force unless it's self-defense. If a preacher wants to preach, fine, make a space for him. But the authoritarian left physically attacked the preacher, and the libertarians stood by and watched. Antifa buys into an oppression hierarchy, which means that they can always be taken over by a black or Indian group, because if they didn't let the BLM rule them, they'd be racist. I guarantee you that there are plenty of white Antifa kids who are rethinking their racially based hierarchy. They realize the difference between equality and black and brown supremacy. They're in the position of starting an organization, assuming that they would lead it, then having it taken over by people with darker skin. Not based on merit, but merely based on skin color, which is not supposed to matter, right? This happens in left-wing organizations. It happened in a women's movement a few years ago. It was started by a bunch of fair-skinned women. It was for all women. But the black women said that they wanted it to be a subgroup within the main group, and then they wanted representation on the leadership council. Then they said that they needed to take over the whole thing because they felt like they were better able to lead a movement started by the fair-skinned women. I've got to find words to get around the algorithm. That's why some of the syntax is kind of awkward. And that's just what they did. They took over, they handled the GoFundMe, and they took care of the money. The original women were fired and kicked out of a group that they started. Not that I care, because they're all a bunch of hippies anyway, but it's kind of funny. Which begs the question, why didn't the women of color just organize and start their own group? Which is a question nobody will ask, because they're scared of being called istophobic. But it's the world that they built for themselves. It's not feminism, a theory of equality between the sexes. It's intersectionalism. It's a hierarchy based on skin color. Translation, it's a racial supremacist organization. Here's what happened. The puppet masters saw that feminism had reached roughly its goal. The Equal Pay Act in 1965, I think. Roe v. Wade, you got a high divorce rate, lower birth rates for fair-skinned women, which is their goal. They want to encourage those women to abort and put off childhood past their fertility window. But feminism had accomplished as much destruction as it could, and the puppet masters needed to cause more fighting. So they invented the racist version of feminism, intersectionalism. Watching the black speaker at the Chaz occupation, the anti-white hatred is insane. I wonder if it's red-pilling some of the Antifa kids. Though to be accurate, most of the racism was coming from black women for some reason. They hate the whites. Fair enough, I hate these kids too. But I also saw them fighting with black male speakers. From what I have seen, the sense of entitlement is off the charts. Aren't they all working together for a better Seattle? There is no equality when you hold one group supreme. That's the conflict between BLM and Antifa. It's a racial thing, but it's the BLM being racist. They don't want equality, they want supremacy. And nobody has the balls to step up and say, hey, that's not what we're all about. We're all in this together. We're all equal, right? Because SJWs work on mob rule. That's why they will always take a consensus and never hold an independent, contrary opinion. Chaz is showing how that's working in the real world. It isn't. It is non-stop fighting. The left is learning something about black folk that the rest of us who grew up with them, our black friends, already knew. They are super hardcore racist, and they don't give a shit, which is refreshing. Most of us don't give a shit about racism because all humans are racist. It's not a big deal. It's part of being human. It has lost its meaning. But this puts liberals in a tough position. They either have to pretend that they don't hear it, or they try to explain it with a little Marxist doublespeak. instead of just admitting it and saying, yeah, it's an issue, we're working on it. What do you want? But liberals are terrified of black people, so that will never happen. They will never confront them. And you end up with Seattle, a shithole, because Marxists won't admit that different people are different. As soon as the black girl speaking started talking down to people based on race and gender, or sex, people should have told her to shut the fuck up with that racist bullshit. Not a single person did, because it's against the false reality that they constructed for themselves. It's a feedback loop. 1, all humans are racist, a true statement. 2, black people can't be racist, a false statement. This leads to a faulty loop where the program, or in this case, a political movement, can't move forward without fixing this logical error. All humans are racist, black people are humans, black humans are racist. Right now, they're trying to build on the math that 2 plus 2 equals 5. They will never progress past the chaos and violence of Seattle. This is still playing by the rules of Marxism. They invented a word 90 years ago whose only purpose is to cause division. But people adjust, so the Marxists just change the definition to cause more division. And 99% of the kids in Seattle don't know that they're just useful idiots for the puppet masters who are pulling their strings. The 1% who do know are truly evil. If you watch the crowd, you can pick out the shot callers and the lower IQ puppets. The shot callers know what the game is, but put on your tinfoil hat, because there is a layer above those kids. The SPLC, ADL, ACLU, and it goes on, but I see I've gone on for long enough. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. If you want to support the channel, click the links below to send me your Comicscape project to be edited, or send me something you want me to look at. All right, guys, I will see you all next episode.